Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
The Adventures of Batman.
Welcoming you to the new adventures of Batman.
Welcome to episode 8 of Batmanimation, a Batman on Film podcast, revisiting the animated adventures of the Caped Crusader. I'm senior contributor Javi Trujillo, and joining me is the whisperer of weather, the son of my son records, the founder of BOF, Bill Jett Ramey. Bill, is it cold yet in Texas?
It's 52 this morning in the DFW. So, relatively speaking, that can be considered cold. Compared to 110 just a few months ago, yes, that was cold. But no, I'll take 50s and high 70s, low 80s anytime. But yes,
we are
nice.
We are still looking at low 90s in Central Texas, unfortunately for the weekend. And then Monday, someone's throwing the switch and we're going to be in the mid 70s for a high. And I cannot wait.
If you dip down into any mornings in the 50s yet?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah.
But
good.
I mean, that's short-lived.
Yes, I understand it, but man, we've had some, like yesterday, it got up. It was flirting with a 90. It was 88, 89.
Yeah.
But it was much cooler this morning. And I think it's only going to be low 80s today. But and I think we got like maybe is it this weekend? There's like we're getting into the 40s. So I'll turn the fireplace on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't see that until like Tuesday morning. Otherwise, yeah, we're in the mid 60s at night. But today, you and I are going to talk about another Batman animated series, not Batman the Animated Series, but we are going to discuss Beware the Batman. One of my personal goals for doing this show, at least at first, is just bouncing around and trying to hit at least one of every series until we start doing more and more deep dives into the shows proper. And you were kind of interested in this from the start, talking about Beware the Batman, which originally aired July 13th, 2013 on Cartoon Network. And it has a bit of a troubled history in that it took over for The Brave and the Bold. They wanted to go into more serious tone with it. Especially this is a year after The Dark Knight Rises. And also at the time in animation, there was a big push for more CGI animated shows. The traditional style had been kind of falling out. You had your Star Wars, The Clone Wars, the Green Lantern animated series was Green CGI. Lantern, and that just seemed to be where the trend was going, and DC followed suit with that. And thankfully we kind of bounced away from that back to a more traditional animation style. But because of that, it makes this series unique in that it doesn't look like any other animated show before or since. But it also led to a lot of problems, and the show only lasted one season. And not only did it last one season, but after a couple months, like it just kind of got pulled from the Cartoon Network morning lineup.
It was weird. I think they messed up. I mean, like Brave and the Bold was in Friday night prime time when it would, and that was fine. I have no issue with that. But Brave and the Bold could have just as easy have been a Saturday morning show.
Yeah,
but Beware the Batman clearly it was probably more suited for like a Friday night primetime,
which
air
it
date.
eventually got.
Yeah.
When they wound up pulling it from Saturday, they put it on their Adult Swim block.
Yeah.
Which was more appropriate, I think. But then that became the problem. There wasn't a toy line to support it. Like me personally, I don't have any Brave and the Bold toys in my collection. My son has a few of the regular figures and then some of the smaller, I don't know if they were Imaginext or something, but he's got like a Sportsmaster and a Green Arrow and a Blue Beetle and a couple of other little figures that don't really have articulation. But I didn't get anything from the Brave and the Bold personally. And with Beware the Batman, they had one figure. I think I was talking with Peter about it. There's like a DC Universe wave that just had Batman. Like he never got, the villains from the episode we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
None of his supporting cast. It's just this one Batman figure. And then once they switched to Adult Swim, then it just got canceled unceremoniously. And they wound up dumping the remaining episodes on I think a marathon. And I haven't even finished watching it. And at the time that it came out, originally I didn't have cable, so I was buying these either from iTunes or watching them at work where I did have cable and trying to catch it on a Saturday morning. So I haven't seen the back half of the show still. I recently bought the Blu-ray. They're pretty much made on demand through Warner's service. So I've had the part 1 for a while, and just recently I went and bought part 2 because these days with streaming and content wars, it's like you never know when something's going to get pulled, and I wanted to have it on my shelf. So hopefully as we go through these episodes, I'll finally finish the show. But did you watch this live when it first aired?
I covered it. I was impressed. I liked the style because it was different and it was pretty good animation, in my opinion, for a television production. And I covered it, and then it went off the air, and I was like, what? And I don't think I end up watching it on Adult Swim, but I did when they released the Blu-ray, the 2 Blu-rays as part 1 and part 2. I finally watched the I guess the back half, the second half of the series. And I just don't think they gave it a chance, especially they pulled it from its original time slot pretty quickly, and then aired it, like you said, on Adult Swim, and then it just went away, and they end up airing the remainder, like we already talked about. But I wish they gave it a little. I mean, God, the Batman got 5 seasons. The Brave and the Bold only got 3, and then this one got barely 1. If you want to look at it, how they pulled it. But the Brave and the Bold even took a kind of jabbed at the powers that be when it went off the air prematurely. I think they'd like to have gotten another season out of it. If you've ever watched the last episode when they're tearing down the set and stuff, it's pretty funny. So anyway, not to get on a Brave and the Bold kick here. So, but
even those. No, go ahead.
I'll just say this, and this has been the last animated series that we've had, and we're waiting on the Cape Crusader. So we'll see when that where and when that finally airs.
Yeah, eventually they did Justice League Action, which I haven't seen too many of, and I don't think it's on HBO Max. And those are more of like the original Teen Titans Go, where it was like a half an episode block is really just one episode.
Yeah,
they're more like 10-minute shorts, and I haven't seen all of those, but at least Kevin Conroy's back. But it's weird to think that it's been almost a decade since we've had this solo Batman TV show. And even if you compare it to the recent Blu-ray releases where we've had a remastered Batman the Animated Series, a remastered Batman Beyond. Like, they've gotten these great collections. Even the Batman's gotten one. But Beware the Batman just kind of got dumped with no extras.
Yeah.
2.0 DTS audio, so it's pretty bare bones, but at least it's out there. So the synopsis for this episode from IMDb reads: Batman goes up against Professor Pig. Alfred hires a bodyguard for Bruce Wayne, a Japanese warrior named Katana, which, all right, spoilers for what's coming up in episodes to come. The cast is Anthony Ruvivar as Batman. I'm pretty unfamiliar with him. Jeff Bennett is Simon Stagg. J.B. Blanc is Alfred. Brian George as Professor Pig. Udo Kier as Mr. Toad. Sumali Montano as Tatsu Yamashiro. And this one I was happy with. Kurtwood Smith as Lieutenant James Gordon. If you're a fan of RoboCop, he is Clarence Boddicker, and he's got a great voice. Gary Anthony Williams is Michael Holt. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. It was written by Mitch Watson, directed by Sam Liu. So I like to look at like Batman history and put these episodes into context. And we talked a little bit before about the circumstances surrounding the release of this show. But Pig and Toad debuted in Batman and Robin #1, which was June 3rd of 2009. So only 4 years until they made it to the small screen. That was part of the Batman Reborn launch. I don't know if you remember, it was post RIP, Batman was dead, Dick was Batman. And it was written by Grant Morrison with art by Frank Quitely. So similar to when Haas and I did the Bane episode of Batman the Animated Series, there was a really short turnaround time, it felt like, to get these characters to the screen, which right off the bat gives this series, it separates it from the pack. In addition to being CGI, having villains that we've never seen before in animation was a good way to establish the show. And speaking of introductions, like, there is a great introduction to Batman in here.
Yes,
they use a lot of shadows and smoke, and he's interrupting just two guys doing a heist of a van. And it's such a great setup because it shows Batman using knowledge for intimidation purposes and how physical he is too. What did you think of this intro?
I wrote great opening action sequence in my notes. Very, very Batman. I mean, it's like core Batman at its core. Intervene in a heist and taking out two robbers. Really good. I mean, very grounded and very, very Batman.
Yeah. And just to make sure this is a new show, I mean, they have the bad guys say the title of the show.
Yeah.
In the episode. What is it? What do they say? Oh yeah, beware the Batman.
Beware the Batman.
So, but I mean, and they really just differentiate this iteration from the Brave and the Bold, because both are very intelligent people and very smart. But like, this Batman gets injured. I can't recall the Brave and the Bold one getting hurt necessarily, but here this Batman goes all Riggs. If you're a Lethal Weapon fan, his shoulder gets dislocated in the fight and he shoves it back into place himself, which later on, when he's at Wayne Manor and walking around without a shirt, you see like bruises on him. So it feels very, very Christian Bale, very Batman Begins. And the bat suit, I thought, was very movie-esque. Like, and what I mean by that is, at this point in time, all Batman has worn from, once Adam West turned in the cowl forward, is a black suit. So this Batman is all black.
All black.
Even his bat is black with just a gold utility belt. And, this is a year after The Dark Knight Rises. So he's very much still in that cinematic mold, I think.
And with the animation, there's also like a sheen on the suit. It's not that you can tell like there wasn't a sheen on the Robert Pattinson suit. It was very what's the word I'm looking for? Not sheen. I know there's a word.
Dull.
With the you could see that with the way they were constructed with the molded latex and the rubber from the suits from Keaton on through The Dark Knight Rises. There was always a little sheen on them when it was lit. So you kind of had that replicated with this animated series.
Where do you rank this bat suit among like other animated iterations?
I can't say that like I have one that's like a favorite, because I mean they were all with from Batman the Animated Series through Brave and the Bold. They weren't completely all that different from each other. I mean, they were designed a little different as far as just how they were drawn, but they had the underwear on the outside and the utility belt, and though I would just real quick, I'd say that probably I really liked and I wasn't a big fan of the Justice League animated series, but I did like the way Batman looked in it.
Yeah.
I liked it. Was more of a kind of a nod to the the original Detective 27. Ears were a little longer and out, a little sleeker. I liked wear the Batman suit. I think it was a little bit more like you said, it was kind of they're going with a movie vibe there for what we have seen. So I have no complaints on it.
I don't remember my initial reactions to it, other than it was kind of hard to see at first because of the resolution that I was watching it in.
Yeah.
And looking at it now with 2022 eyes, I find it really refreshing to see like an all black suit. Not that I don't like the gray and black takes we've gotten recently in the last decade, but there's something very nostalgic for me to see like a movie style color configuration, because to this point Batman's animated suits have been, like you've said, more of a classic look with like either the blue and gray or the black and gray, often with a yellow oval, which I love. Go Team Yellow Oval. But it's kind of nice to see this differentiation, and because of where I'm rereading right now, when Batman comes back after the whole Night's Fall, Night Quest, Night's End, and then he goes away again, and then when he finally comes back in Troika, he comes back with a new suit that was supposed to be at the time more of a movie look, like the Panther suit from Forever. And I don't really feel like they nailed it completely. Like they weren't consistent with it and they didn't stick with it for very long. But this is more in line with that, where he's just all black.
Yeah, it's I want to say that suit, I think we first saw it, that would have been Kelly Jones art, right?
Yeah, Kelly Jones.
It had some it looked like it was like he was wearing like a unitard. There was no detail, you know what I'm saying, on the suit itself. And you had like you didn't see where the gloves ended, on his forearms, and it had the spikes, the talons, or
the scallops,
scallops, and he had these two scallops on his shin area where the boots were. I remember thinking, because I prefer the all black personally, but that's kind of reminiscent of that suit back in the early 90s.
So that's where my head was at with it this time. And it probably made it easier for them to animate too, because there's not a lot of detail if it's all black. As for Pig and Toad, they don't sound like what I would have expected. Like they've got some really talented actors behind the voices. But in the comic version, Toad he's got more of a carnival background. And Professor Pig is inspired from Pygmalion. But I never really got like the whole British or Wind in the Willows vibe from him. And Pig in the show is he is just a Hulk of a character, versus the comic is more of a regular sized human shape, maybe a little overweight at times depending on the depiction. But the visual for Toad I think is pretty spot on with the comic book.
Yeah, it was. I remember, speaking of that, I think they released when they first released the original promo information. It was like they were making a concerted effort to go with villains who we hadn't seen before in previous animated Batman series, and so they pulling them to be. I'm not a huge Grant Morrison Batman fan. There's some things I like, some things I don't. I can't say that Professor Pig and Mr. Toad are some of my favorite Batman villains. Sometimes they create a new character, a new villain that you go, that's really good. I just never got the Mr. Toad thing, like being a frog.
I don't think he's had any other iteration other than this one.
Yeah.
Versus Pig we've seen in the Arkham games. Was he on Gotham? That's a Peter Vera
I
question.
have no idea. Yeah.
He definitely showed up in season 3 of Batwoman. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's cool because I appreciate adding new rogues to the roster, and you know that I'm a Morrison fan when it comes to Batman, but I think that there's Bane level characters that get introduced, and then I think Pig is more of like a mid-tier Batman villain. He's good for a story every now and then, but he's not. I mean, obviously, he's not going to be joining the ranks of Riddler and Catwoman and Penguin anytime soon, unless Matt Reeves like pulls a fast one and just blows us all out of the water.
Yeah.
To provide a surprise Professor Pig in the Arkham series or in the Batman 3 or something.
Sure.
And they're going after Simon Stagg, who's got some pretty deep DC ties, going back to the Brave and the Bold 57 in January of 1965. Are you familiar with Simon Stagg?
Other than this, no.
Okay, he's the
unless you tell me something I read that I didn't realize that he was.
Yeah, he's kind of like a villain or an antagonist, more so for Metamorpho. Metamorpho is in love with Simon Stagg's daughter, so they've got a history there. Which, as you know, we go on with this show. There's a lot of 70s, 80s Batman and the Outsiders influence to the show, which again, it sets it apart from other iterations. So as we'll see with Tatsuo later on, like we kind of have like a lot of Batman the Outsiders influence in this show. And like just going in general for the villains, like we get Magpie later on, we get Anarchy. I like how we get some of the lesser used people, but like the show never gets a chance to show us what their Joker would have been like. And I appreciate them branching out, but at the same time, like you want to see what this Batman's Joker was. And
sure. I mean, I think the closest they got with classic villain was Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't really fleshed out all that much, if I recall. But I just like that. Professor Pig is fine. That I had a hard time with this Mr. Toad, especially he has some kind of Black Canary type of
Sonic
scream.
cry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sonic cry thing going on. Was like, okay,
that was not in the comic to my recollection.
you're like literally a frog, and you have this Black Canary power. So
Yeah.
that wasn't really my thing.
Yeah. Wayne Manor, when we see it, it's just gigantic.
Yeah.
Like,
So like on
it's
top
got
of
to be the
like almost a mountain type cliff location.
yeah. It's huge and sprawling. It's got to be the biggest one we've ever seen in any iteration. Even talking comics, it's huge. And when we meet Alfred, are you familiar with like the Peter Sellers like Pink Panther movies?
I wrote down that when we were introduced to Alfred, it reminded me of Cato and Inspector Clouseau.
Yes, that was my thought too. And I haven't seen those since I was a boy. But
it wasn't that was a bit they were doing in those movies. It was, comedy. This one was a more serious version of that. But yes, I wrote that down. Alfred goes after Bruce while he sleeps. Reminds me of Cato and Inspector Clouseau. Yes.
Yeah. And this Alfred, I want to say that he's got maybe an Earth One influence. And I don't know how, long it took to animate, but the Earth One Volume 1 dropped July of 2012, and this is a year later. So it was definitely in my mind in like when they were announcing the show. This Alfred isn't so much a butler, though he does serve as one. He's more of a bodyguard, and he's former MI6.
Yes.
Which, for me, I always like my Batman and Bond crossovers. What did you think of bald, hulking Alfred? Because he seems like he's bigger than Batman.
I like the Earth One backstory of Alfred. I like that they used this, or apparently they had to be an influence because it's just too similar. The military, I like how they incorporated it into the Batman a little bit, that we know Alfred had a military background. I don't need Alfred to be, thin, balding with a pencil mustache to be Alfred. We've seen Alfred look different in the movies. And it's the same here. I like the fact they did something different with Alfred. So it seems like he was like head of security. And they kind of went with that, like I said, in the Batman, we know that Alfred had a military service background. And yeah, I had no problem with it. It kind of reminded me, who did he remind me of, that actor? Jason Statham a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
A little bit.
Yeah, and Alfred has always had a vague military background, at least from the comics I remember as a kid, where he was in the army, like a medic in the army or something. But throughout, well, since
I know
Earth One, really,
way back in the day, he had been like, he was an actor at one time, But this
he
is
did
the
his
more
military
recent
service, then was an actor.
Yeah. So the more recent version of they've in different like most comics and whatnot, they talk about his military background, spy background, which I kind of like that with Alfred. You know, making him more than just a butler.
For sure. And you know what time it is? I think it's time for a word from our sponsor, Bill.
Let's go.
So they're in the Batcave, Alfred and Batman. Actually, before that, Bruce is walking around without his shirt on. And he's got nipples. I don't know if they're bat nipples, but he's got nipples. But I don't remember any fan outcry like we did with the suit that we see Batman's nipples in this show. But they're there in their CGI glory. And they head down to the Batcave because there's a video they're analyzing. So we get to see their Batcave. It's pretty sparse. There's not a lot of trophies in there. And they're analyzing this video that leads to a clue of who the next victim is going to be, which is Michael Holt. Do you know who Michael Holt is, or are you familiar with him?
I am not familiar with Michael Holt either.
All right. Well, Michael Holt, I was surprised. He first appeared in The Spectre, Volume 3, number 54 of June 97.
Okay.
So I didn't know that or maybe I'd forgotten that he debuted in The Spectre. What I know Michael Holt from is the JSA. He is the second Mr. Terrific after Terry Sloan. And he is billed as the third smartest man in the world in the comics. And he's got like a fortune to rival Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne, which we don't get any hint of that in the show. But as a fan Easter egg, I appreciated it.
It's interesting. Those are deep pools, those two other characters.
Yeah. So eventually we get he gets kidnapped along with Simon Stagg. And Batman tries to interfere with the kidnapping and goes on a chase in his Batmobile, which to me reminded me of, and this predates it, but if it's similar to any Batmobile, to me it's closest to the BVS Batmobile, in as much as it has a really wide stance. What did you think of this Batmobile?
Well, now that you mentioned that, I probably would agree. I mean, clearly it looks like, it's a Batmobile, and they use the technology, the CGI technology to really, Batmobile it up, if you will. So, I mean, it had two big jet exhaust things in the back, So I remember thinking, well, that must be pretty damn powerful car. Here was two of those flaming exhausts. So yeah, I didn't think, oh, that's awesome, or oh, that sucks. Either way, it was the Batmobile.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out really to my mind either. There's we were at an arcade recently, and I got to sit down and play that Batman arcade game from, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. And it's basically like you're racing the Batmobile through Gotham, doing different missions, and you can pick which Batmobile you're going to be in. And it's got, Adam West, it's got Keaton's, it's got the Tumbler, it's got the animated series, it's got Brave and the Bold. And all those are very distinct visually. And I don't know if I would be able to pull this out of a hat right away. This is the Batman one.
Yeah, I could recognize the others, but you're right.
I mean,
when you see it, it's the Batmobile, but other than that,
the like if I would have seen an image of this a week ago, I wouldn't have known what it was from. The only thing now, having watched or rewatched, the first 5 or 6 episodes, the only thing that makes it stand out in my mind is it's got like these gold hubcaps.
Yeah.
Which matches his Batman suit because it's black with the only thing else on there is a gold utility belt.
It's got Batman version of Alexa or
yes.
Or what I want to Kit from Knight Rider, it's got a voice modulate, something that that speaks computer, it speaks to that Batman can converse with. So yeah.
And somehow knows to analyze buildings that Batman's going to as he's driving over there and stuff like that.
And calls him Batman.
Yeah. That part definitely felt very Saturday morning to me. Which is weird. I mean, and we'll talk about this as we do more episodes, but like the tone of this is, when it comes to Batman, I feel like it's really serious. Batman is treated, I feel, very respectfully, but some of the characters, when it comes to like villains or just random non-comic characters tend to be a little more Saturday morning silly, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But we get introduced to Tatsu Yamashiro. She first appeared in The Brave and the Bold 200, which was July of 1983. And most people will know her as Katana. She's got your back. And she's another one of the outsiders. And Alfred tries to bring her in for a mysterious assignment. But as she drives off, he gets attacked by Pig and Toad because they're looking for Bruce Wayne. And they kidnap Alfred as well, since Bruce isn't there. So their whole plot revolves around hunting those who drove off the animals that once occupied the wetlands in the area with their business deals, which is unique for these characters because that's not something. The Professor Pig in the comics is not ecologically minded, let's say. He's got like some weird Dollatron fetish where he like surgically alters people to try and make them, his perfect mind, which would not work on a Saturday morning cartoon show. So I get why they changed it, because it especially if you played like the Arkham games, where it's more of like a body horror type situation, like that's not going to translate for cartoons for kids. And the Bat computer tells Batman that there's methane gas in the area, making it ripe for explosions. So it sets up that there's a sense of danger there as Batman's trying to rescue Holt and Stag and Alfred, who are all tied together with chains, trying to make it through this underground layer of Pig and Toad.
Yeah, and it's like booby traps all throughout.
Yeah,
as they're making their way.
Which definitely makes it feel Batman. Like it's nice to have. You want to have Batman going against booby traps, and even when he goes to rescue him, he's kind of climbing up all these stairs. Like anytime you see Batman going up like this impossibly tall thing of stairs, I can't help but think of '89.
True. Yeah, there was a lot of stairs in that movie, in that church tower. Yeah,
you should probably do a podcast talking about Batman '89. I don't know.
I think that
make for good conversation
here soon. Yes.
But something that this show does differently. I mean, it's definitely self-contained episodes, but at the same time, there's like a serialization to it.
There is.
Things carry over. Like you can put on any episode of The Brave and the Bold, any episode of the animated series, and you can just jump right in, unless it's like a two-parter. But with this show, like you can't just randomly throw one on if you've never seen it before, because everything builds on it. And in this, Alfred breaks his ankle saving Holt and Stag, which has ramifications throughout the entire series, because this whole episode he's trying to tell Bruce how he wants to be out there more in some capacity and help him out. And now he's got a broken ankle, so he can't do anything other than stay at the manor. Like he can't even really, chauffeur him around. And it's just one of many aspects that the show does that kind of builds upon what, subplots came before.
Yeah, they're self-contained episodes, but have a continuing storyline going on. So they hint at Gordon. We only see him it's a TV shot.
Yeah. Lieutenant Gordon.
And then, like you said, we had the mysterious phone calls between Katana and Alfred. And then at the end, we find out what her purpose. She accepts the job that he had offered her and introduces her. But I mean, that, and of course, Batman comes in, helps save the three guys who are being hunted by Toad and Frog. Bombs start blowing up, and it's kind of reminded me of the factory in Batman '89. A little bit, and of course, we don't know what happens to them, but Batman says, I'm sure we'll see Pig and Professor Pig and Mr. Toad somewhere. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, down the line somewhere. So he's telling us, well, you eventually he's telling the audience, okay, they didn't die. Don't worry. We'll see them. You know, we're going to see them again. We know they escaped. And that's very comic booky type of, you know, thing where the villains should die, whatever event happens. Usually it's something blowing up or whatever, but they manage to escape and we see them again in another episode or another issue of a comic book.
Yeah. That pretty much brings it to an end. I don't know if it's worth mentioning or not that in terms of like firearms, because of it being Saturday morning, they're definitely, they have guns on this show, but they're more like, they're not tasers per se, but they seem to shoot some kind of like energy bolt. And I think they definitely have like some kind of clip, if I'm remembering, or maybe I'm thinking of another episode in the future. But it definitely plays more into the Saturday morning aspect of it, where it's kind of like a laser gun, for lack of a better term.
Well, but you're right. Batman mentions in the beginning how many shots he has left.
Yeah.
And then does tell him, you know, mentions his clip or, you know, reloading or whatever, you know, he had it.
That's right.
belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say also there is a little bit of a very small character arc for Bruce Wayne Batman, is that in the beginning, he's telling Alfred has to separate Bruce Wayne and Batman, and he can protect Bruce Wayne, but he should have nothing to do with Batman. And at the end, he says, can't protect Bruce Wayne without protecting Batman. So he's allowing Alfred to do his job completely by the end.
Yeah. Bringing this thing in for a landing, what is like your favorite moment from this episode?
I liked how it opened up, the opening sequence. Like I said, it's very Batman. I thought it was well done. Batman to the core. And I think the series looked really good. I was just thinking back when I first saw it, I was pleasantly surprised, you know, either despite my misgivings for that Mr. Toad, you know, Batman fighting a frog, but I would go, you know, I prefer that you could have told this story with different set of Batman villains, you know. You could even use classic Batman villains if you had wanted to, but since they made this effort, they brought these to have newer ones. They brought these two relatively new characters in. But yeah, I say this my favorite part. I enjoyed the episode overall. I thought it was a good introduction to this Batman, and I liked the opening sequence with Batman and the two thugs.
It's something we didn't touch on. What do you think of the theme song for this?
Oh, I really like it. Yeah, I like it. It's it's more in line with the original theme song from the Batman animated series. I think it shares DNA with it as opposed to Brave and the Bold or even the animated series. It's different. It's got kind of a rock pop type of vibe going on to me.
Yeah.
I liked it.
We talked on our last episode that we did together where we talked about the Batman, the animated show, and how it had two different themes. I feel like this one sits really comfortably as a bridge between the original The Batman theme song and the more Adam West inspired theme song for the second half of that show. Like, I feel like this slots in really comfortably.
That's a good take. Yeah,
in
I
between
agree.
the two.
Sure. With you,
And
with you on that.
in hindsight too, it's funny because the main credits are very red, which, as we all know, is, you know, the primary color for the Batman.
Yes.
The movie.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts, Bill?
No, I'll say again, I thought it was a good introduction to this depiction, this interpretation of animated Batman. And I covering it. I enjoyed the series, and I was disappointed when it got pulled, and I wish they'd give it a little bit more time. So hopefully over the course of this Batman on Film podcast, we'll be able to discuss a few more episodes of Beware the Batman. I just thought this one was since it was the first and it was the first episode of the series, that kind of like the pilot, if you will, that would be good to discuss that. And instead of jumping in like, halfway through, some episode, because there is the storylines that continue on. So maybe if you haven't watched it, I would get, if you got HBO Max, check out Beware the Batman. And then if there's an episode you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah, I think it's like 23 or 26 episodes. So, I mean, you can binge the whole series in not a lot of time.
Yeah, they're 21
compared
minutes.
To like,
yeah,
trying to watch, some of the other shows that have, 3, 4, 5 seasons. You can get through this pretty quick. But yeah, like we've discussed before, like with this show, you kind of have to start at the beginning. You can't just randomly throw one on willy-nilly. But I like you said, I think it's a really strong intro to this series and this tone. The CGI, for what it is, I think is really good. This style of animation. It definitely sets it apart from every other show. Although I don't think I'm glad they didn't keep going this way. I'm glad that we've stuck with more of like the drawn look as opposed to the CGI stuff. But it's definitely worth checking out, and it has some unique elements to it. That, one of the things I love about Batman is all the different flavors and iterations. And it's, to me, like these different styles of TV shows are no different than having a different creative team on a book.
Yeah. Like
or a different title.
Katana becomes his first partner, in this version of Batman. So again, if you haven't checked it out, that's just give you a heads up. Katana becomes his sidekick.
Yeah.
And that's not a spoiler. I mean, where it's going.
It's pretty much in the marketing, and she's in the main title sequence. So it's already spoiled from you, right from the jump. So, well, Bill, where can people find you?
You can find me at Batman on Film. Just go to batman-on-film.com, and there I am. You can find my social media stuff. You can find things I want to plug. You want to advertise. You want to become a Patreon, whatever. Batman Podcast Network. It's all Batman on Film. Just go there.
I also am in Batman on Film. Last week I had Batman versus Robin #2 drop, which is definitely becoming an interesting series. If you want to see a fan favorite Batman character, that you should go check out that book. I won't say any more about it, so that way you can enjoy it. And as of this recording, I've got reviews coming up next week for Catwoman and the conclusion of Batman the Night by Chip Zdarsky, which I have been enjoying. And then I'm around at Javi True on Twitter. The Bond is Not Enough on Instagram. You can head to the JamesBondDossier.com for my reviews for the new 007 series. by Dynamite Comics. And Batman on Film, though, doing these podcasts.
One thing I'll plug. Yeah, I'll plug one more thing. We are finishing up with our chapter by chapter discussion of Matt Reeves' The Batman. We have one chapter left of the movie. And then but we're not done completely. We are finishing up, but we're going to also cover the credits. And people say, cover the credits. There is a shout out to several creatives in the history of Batman, and we're going to discuss their influence on the Batman, and also we will do the 2 bonus scenes. But yeah, we are finishing up the Batman, so check out those shows. That's been really fun to talk about that movie, that detailed.
I was watching, just as background noise, I had the Batman on, and when the commissioner comes in to the crime scene, and I immediately heard you and Lauer and your impressions. Yeah, I was like, oh my god, like I can't unthink that or unhear you guys now when I watch that scene. So thank you for that. 18 chapters of that.
You son of a bitch.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Batmanimation, and announcer Rachel will take us home.
Thanks for listening to Batmanimation, a BatmanOnFilm.com podcast revisiting the animated TV and film adventures of the Caped Crusader. Follow Batmanimation on Twitter @Batmanimation. Follow BOF on Twitter @TheBatmanOnFilm. Follow Jett on Twitter @BatmanOnFilm. For Jett and Team BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive, the original, established in 1998.